Yes, yes, yes.
Welcome to the
Sons of Aries podcast.
beautiful, nice. I'm Matthew Brown,
I'm Dan Saberi.
And Jason Cox.
and today we're going to randomly start talking about Jungian archetypes and their relationships with Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the basis for this is, part of our whole channel's philosophy is about taking these topics that are universal and quite intuitive and maybe hard to understand and certainly utilise in your own life, and finding a kind of vessel by which we can understand that. And today we're going to go with Lord of the Rings, because we're all nerds, we all know it.
And other things in pop culture, just so that there's wider understanding, because not everyone knows Lord of the Rings.
True. Well, because these archetypes are universal, they're applicable across the board. It's like a focus on the individual consciousness as well as the collective consciousness. And they've manifested a lot in theology, religious archetypes, and storytelling. A lot of the stories we tell ourselves have sort of theological or religious bases from various different traditions. So,
And I think it's important that, for whatever kind of popular or non-popular culture you're into, they all the stories have the same foundation in these kind of ancient things, in this old oral tradition before any, media, any documentation. They've all come basically from the same wellspring. So using some kind of logic, you can extrapolate that there's basically some universal truth therein.
I think that's fair. We're going to be using the website positivepsychology.com to help us out with the kind of a framework for these archetypes. And yeah. So shall we give do you want me to just read some of this out for like what is an archetype? Because I'm not...
Yeah, certainly what is an archetype, yeah.
Okay, nice. So I'll just read these couple of paragraphs here from this website, which again you can go and check out, positivepsychology.com. Embarking on a journey through the realm of Jungian archetypes is akin to embarking on an odyssey into the depths of the collective unconscious, a realm where ancient wisdom intertwines with modern understanding, and where myths, symbols, and dreams converge to illuminate the hidden corners of our minds. Through the lens of transpersonal psychology, we come to recognize that within each individual resides a myriad of archetypal forces, shaping our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors in ways both subtle and profound. At its essence, an archetype is more than just a symbol or a recurring motif. It is a primordial pattern deeply ingrained in the collective unconscious of humanity. I was just doing some quick reading up before we started, and sort of the idea of archetypes stem from, I didn't know this, from like ancient Greece, or maybe a little before then, but they were like primarily used in relation to theology, like religious archetypes, and then it was Carl Jung in the 20th century who popularized it in psychology. I didn't know. These archetypal patterns manifest in myths, fairy tales, dreams, and even in the narratives of our everyday lives, serving as building blocks for our collective human experience. They serve as the fundamental blueprints of the human psyche, shaping our perceptions, behaviors, and relationships in ways both conscious and unconscious. They are the ancient guardians of our deepest truths and desires, whispering to us from the depths of our unconscious mind, whether it be the hero embarking on a quest, the wise sage offering guidance, or the shadow lurking in the depths of the psyche. Archetypes permeate every aspect of human existence, offering us a glimpse into the timeless mysteries of the human soul.
Wow, it's quite pretentious.
Yeah.
So let's translate that into modern English somewhat, shall we?
Go for it.
So basically it's things that are universally there and evident. So I'll give a really banal example. People from the UK of our age, in terms of seeing stuff that is universally true, I always think of the In-Betweeners, right? Where they're all this kind of different, distinct character, but everyone knows one of those characters.
Yeah, someone like them, yeah.
So it's you look at these...
So in the cinema, for instance, when we were watching, every time someone did something particular, we'd always everyone point round and go, that was Lewis, that was Dan. Yeah.
Everyone knows a J.
Yeah.
Everyone knows a Neil.
Yeah,
Well, there's bits of J in all of us.
Yeah. There's a bit of J in all of us.
The same kind of thing with Peep Show as well, right? You've got like the kind of anal mark character, kind of the wayward Jez, the sort of drug-addled super hands.
And the, like, weirdly dominant but incompetent Johnson.
Yeah, yeah.
What's that one?
In the Peep Show.
Oh, right. No, I've not seen it. So.
Fair enough. We won't find out too much. But yeah, no, like it's like there's like things you can recognize as like aspects of characters that you can either recognize in yourself or in your friends.
Yeah, sure.
Sort of yeah.
And I think these things are actually endlessly inspiring to me because they're these kind of universal, eternal truths that give you a link to something more, that it's the past or the future or whatever the fuck you believe in on a higher plane. Like, okay, Jace, great example. You know, we take the piss a bit, but you see like Achilles doing this thing, and obviously you know you're not Achilles, but he's shooting for the same kind of thing that you are, and you can recognise a bit of yourself within that.
Seen as that guy.
Yeah, exactly.
You relate to the vision which he sort of embodies.
Yeah, exactly, precisely.
Well, what vision is that? I think that's a good.
Well, he's the special boy, the one that they call on to do the thing that everyone else either can't do or is scared to do, or guy to stand up and do that extra bit.
And what is it about Achilles that makes people call on him to do that?
Because he is the bollocks.
Nice.
Clearly.
Yeah.
He's very sure of himself and his skill set, and he's very willing to be the guy, to stand up and say, oh, I will be the one to do it.
Sorry, I had to pause it a sec.
Alright, bless me.
As it on the editing. That was hard keeping that in when you were talking.
That's what she said.
We could keep that.
I want to keep it. I want to keep it.
It's genuine. Anyway, okay, so
no, but I think that's a good example of like you draw on Achilles, the myth, or the story of.
Sorry.
That's all right, man. Don't worry about it.
Try and go back on that because that's going to sound like shit.
No, it's fine. I'm sure they won't mind. No, I think that's a good place to, because you're like, there's a story of Achilles, real or not, right? Real or not doesn't matter, does it? Like there's
the idea of
idea of a guy who's the bollocks, as you put it, right? Who is competent, confident in himself.
Guys, I'm fucking dying.
What the fuck? Where does that come from?
I don't know, just start that bit again. I'm just getting like a fucking hay fever bout out of nowhere with terrible timing. Oh my god. Sorry.
That's all right, man. Don't worry about it.
Fuck. Sorry,
take
straight from the in-betweeners to Achilles. I think it's like, I never know if it's going to be alright, because it's fine now, then the second it might go doo-doo-doo. Okay, so go from the... So, Jace, you're relating to Achilles, whatever it was you were saying.
Yeah, so when you're drawing on the character, real or not, of Achilles, and because the stories of Achilles you find inspiring, or you feel draw out aspects of yourself that you are either you are aspiring to. Like, I want to be the bollocks. I want to be the guy that people call on. I want to be the guy that can do stuff that can't when people can't do it. I want to be the guy that can rock up, solve someone's problems, or at least be helpful. Or at least
have a purpose, have a specific purpose that you can stand up and say, I will be the one to do it. Yeah.
It's also that validation of the kind of things that you want and you feel, right? Because it's like, oh, I can see this thing that I can relate to, therefore I'm not just some kind of weirdo in a puddle on the outside with my own agenda. This is a real thing that is there for a reason. And it's about that kind of representation of self. But I think the curious thing with all these characters, which I actually love about all the well thought through material, is that they don't just extol the virtues, they really go into what the potential pitfalls and downsides are. So what would you think would be like a downside of Achilles that you would also relate to as kind of a warning to yourself?
Besides the heel.
I did actually slightly tear my Achilles, falling off a bike a few years ago.
Oh shit.
That was horrible. But in actual regard of his sort of mental state, it could be like, obviously in the real world there are like less dangers than you don't just have a one-on-one fight in the street like to save an army. So obviously it's difficult to sort of bring out a sort of bad side of that, but I guess it would be being too reckless and Yeah.
Kind of arrogant, cold, a bit dark about it. Because, you know, coming with being the special boy, being the undefeatable warrior, there must come some kind of either arrogance or kind of tyranny,
Yeah.
that, you know, you think you're some kind of ubermensch and therefore you can do what you want.
Undefeatable, yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of machismo, that kind of like excessive masculinity, kind of like swinging your dick around unnecessarily kind of thing. Rather than
I certainly want to be seen as like the arrogant wanker. That because you end up pushing everyone away and you won't be called upon.
Yes.
Because you know, in today's society, like I say, it's not the same as obviously in Troy. You're not going to be called on for a one-on-one. But in those instances, you want to have people around who do want you there for situations.
Right. Well, and like later on in life, you may have a family, right? You may have children, and you want to be able to protect them should something happen. It's not like you're going around, like you say, fighting people in the street because I have the capacity to fight people in the street. It's just as and when I need to. What's that parable? It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. Yeah,
sure. Yeah, having the capacity to be the guy to fulfill certain things,
And I think that brings us quite onto the negative side that you're trying to avoid, and being aware of that is kind of what separates man from beast, right? So let's go with that analogy that you're the great protector, you're the best warrior. The dark side of that, and that everyone would hate you for, is if your calling is to protect. So the shadow of that would be, well, you're a pussy and worse than me because I need to protect you. So then you're kind of devaluing your own point and their point. And as you say, no one's ever going to want you around. You're never going to get called upon.
Yeah.
And you see this a lot in...
Yeah, if you're not fun to play with, but essentially, then you won't be there.
Exactly. Think of like some of the best footballers.
Yeah.
Everyone knows they're a great player, but they don't get in the team because they're dickheads. Because they know they're so good and they either don't work hard enough, or they're like, oh, I'm so special, I'm just going to swan around and the team will have to carry me.
Yeah.
But the thing is,
I
when
only
you're
want to
like
do that certain little bit and they can all do the
But
rest.
you need to protect yourself as well, because the instant you stop performing and you're a dick, you're fucking out and you're never coming back again.
Yeah. Ruined reputation.
Yeah, because I guess people could be keeping you around because of the benefit of what your capacities are. Like, you give them the ball, they'll score a goal. But as soon as that diminishes, well, now we've got no reason to keep you around.
Yeah.
So you're gone.
Yeah. They're just waiting for you to fuck up so that they can take your place or continue off. You know, of all the warlords and of all the gods, I hate him the most.
Yeah, I was going to say, the only reason Agamemnon keeps Achilles around is because he is that one guy that is the bollocks. But if he didn't have that, or he didn't necessarily need him, he would get rid of him because he was a wanker and a bit of a rogue.
He's certainly kind of I would say rebel without a cause, but his cause is kind of his own
his
myth.
own grandeur.
And that's like, grandure's great, you know, in moderation. So again, we take that, use like a football analogy, whatever. If you're a centre forward, you want to be scoring the goals. Of course, you want to win the golden boot, but that means nothing
if the team doesn't win.
Or if you've done it at the team's expense.
Yeah.
If you're just being a slightly poacher.
Yeah. If you lose 5-4, but you score all four goals, you're obviously done well for yourself, but the team's lost. So the result is.
And if your attitude is bad about that, you'll be replaced. So as we were talking about archetypes, I think Achilles represents quite nicely. And let me just see if I'm getting the language right, because it's slightly differently worded.
Excuse my handwriting.
But the archetype of the hero. So that can translate into the warrior as well. Yeah. And that's basically all about be the key player, but don't be arrogant. So that's your kind of pitfall. And it links kind of, in fact, somewhat back to the stuff we were talking about the Enneagram the other day, which is, here's your desires, but watch out for that. You know. So what's the next one we got on the list there, Matt? Seeing as that was a really quite a good representation, kind of accidentally off the bat.
Yeah. Well, so the other two. I mean, there's 12 sort of character archetypes on this website that you can check out. We've kind of picked 3 main ones we were talking about. The hero being one of them, the lover, and the magician being the other 2. I think if we should stay on the hero for a second, because it kind of takes us into Lord of the Rings.
Yep.
If we want to use.
Oh yeah, sure.
Because obviously Aragorn springs to mind in the context of Lord of the Rings.
Well, I'd say for this, like, I'm more of a warrior, because Aragorn's a funny one, because he is definitely a warrior. Now he's good at fighting, and that's certainly his initial path to where he's not Aragorn, he's not LSR, he's not the heir to the throne. He's Strider, he's a ranger, he's fucked it off.
Yeah.
He just wants to do that thing because he's kind of scared of the responsibility, actually, of the more rulery king archetype that he becomes in its purest form.
I think that part of it is he doesn't feel like he deserves it either.
Yeah, a lot of imposter syndrome kind of that.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of like the hero, the kind of warrior's arc from Lord of the Rings, you can embody that really quite well with Boromir. So throughout a lot of it, he'd be what would be known as like the shadow version of this archetype, wouldn't he? Because he's like, well, he's dark, isn't he? He's not just doing it for protection. He's doing it basically to shithouse everything so he can get the ring for Gondor and his dad. Yeah. And he's trying to nick the ring, and he's kind of spouting all this like, oh, we protect you so much by the blood of our people, your land's kept safe, so you should give me what I want. And then finally he realises, oh, that's the bad way of doing it, because there's more out there than my agenda and my feelings.
Well, they weren't his words though, were they? They were his father's words in a way. Like he wasn't really representing himself.
No, he was just following like orders basically.
But this is another pitfall of the hero or the warrior, isn't it? That the warrior's not really in charge of an army. There's always a king or a general somewhere. So I think you got to be, if you relate to this archetype, quite wary of people kind of wielding you as a weapon, as a blunt instrument. You have to be judicious in your own right as well. And I think you're right, Matt. That's what Boromir realises, that, oh, that's funny, I'm opening my mouth and talking, but my dad's words are coming out. That's really curious. And spoilers, Boromir's daddy ain't the best bloke in the world.
No, he's a twat.
What? Well, here's what's really interesting about Aragorn, because he's kind of the archetype of archetypes in a way. Because I mean, let's explore that. Like, can we think of any sort of examples where he deviates into the shadow of any of these? Because we spoke about the hero. You could fit him into the lover archetype. Because he's got that love interest. He sings, right? He's very in touch with like his masculine and feminine sides of his personality. He's able to be emotionally open with Eowyn, and not just he doesn't just have the bravado of the warrior. He has sympathy for the halflings, right? He's kind of this balanced character.
He's a top dude
consistently throughout the movie, even though you could say, like you said at the beginning, he's Strider, he's the ranger, he's shirking the responsibility of being the heir to the throne of Gondor.
Yeah.
But even in that state, he does look to help straight away, like the halflings when they turn up in, the Prancing Pony.
Yes.
He's straight on it. He's like looking for the dangers to help and serve.
Right.
But what's interesting...
Symbolics, kind of.
What's really interesting
he's top man.
His mindset. So Aragorn doesn't like himself, he doesn't like his path, because he knows he's fucked off the path he's meant to be doing. So he's kind of doing this to run away and make an excuse. So if he was meant to be just the hero warrior, then he'd be perfect. He'd be loving it. But he isn't, because he knows he's got this destiny.
Higher purpose.
Yeah, that he's running away from because it's kind of too much. But you can also fit him arguably into the magician archetype, because he is a healer. He is a bit magic. He has all these kind of intuitive vision dreams.
Live with the elves. And so he's got that
he's
kind of
wistful.
It's kind of a benevolent Ubermensch kind of figure. But what's curious about Aragorn's arc is the temptation to fall into the shadow of kind of all of these archetypes, and we see it really clearly. In terms of like the shadow ruler archetype, we'll come on to another time. He's haunted by what Isildur did. So Isildur's
what I could become. Yeah.
His ancestor. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So he's like, oh
what
shit,
if I turn into
it's
that?
inevitable. Like, this is in my blood. Therefore, that's just a pathway, and I'll do the same thing. So he's terrified. All of that going on, And in terms of being like the tyrannical shadow hero or warrior, Frodo offers him the ring, and he maybe, depending on how you interpret it, has half a nanosecond where he's like,
could do.
Yeah. Could do. But he recognises that potential in himself, that he's not arrogant, that he's like, well, I'm incorruptible, so if I had the ring, then I'd be fine with it.
Yeah.
Well, I think like on your
he
point
steps
about...
back and sees the whole picture, like that he could become. So he takes himself away.
Well, I know, and I think like that the fact that he's been brooding over the actions of Isildur's in my blood, and there's the risk that I'm tainted by the same weakness. Like that moment when Frodo offers him the ring is the test. Like that's it. That's like this is the thing you've been afraid of.
Yeah, my strong
all your life.
Yeah.
Now, yes or no? Do you have that weakness in your blood, or do you not? And he demonstrates that Like, or maybe the fact that he does and is aware of it,
Yeah.
and is then able to act such to mitigate
Yeah,
it.
because he's aware. Yeah, he can say,
Because he's
"Oh,
aware of
actually,
it."
I might be a naughty boy with this, so I'll say no.
Yeah.
I'll pass on this one."
Busters are
And it's interesting as well, though, because he's got Boromir there with him, he can see
Yeah.
that shadow happening in front of him.
Right.
And it's like some kind of divine
Yeah.
projection that's there for him to go, don't fucking do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. What's that bit with Boromir where he he throws his sticks on the floor, has a bit of a tantrum in the movie. You know,
And
he's
he
like,
asks the
I
strength
just
to
want the
defend
power
my
to protect
people."
my people.
Yeah.
Throws his sticks on the floor.
And then Frodo buffs him in the face, which with a hobbit foot, that fucking hurt, man.
Big, hairy, sweaty hobbit foot.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
size 15s.
Yeah.
like an ostrich giving you one in the face.
Clubbed foot.
I don't know why they bother with swords, they've got no reach. I should just do horse kicks at people.
Just kicking people in the shins.
No, you got poor old Sam fighting with pots and pans.
Yeah.
Fucking have some of that.
Yeah, it works though. Works for him.
Well, I guess moving into the realism of the combat is for another discussion. I'm an untrained tiny hobbit, and here's loads of orc warriors who are snarling me with proper weapons.
Yeah.
Oh look, we can
Do your
bop all of
best.
them with no effort.
Yeah.
But hey, that's high fantasy. So yeah, I think Aragorn and Boromir are really good examples of these two.
Positive and negative
Exactly,
aspects
yeah.
of the hero.
Kind of
archetype.
light and dark side of it, if you will. Kind of like if we were to talk about the ruler archetype. You have that as well, not just in Aragorn, but the key ones are the two rulers of men, right? You've got Denethor and you've got Theoden.
Yes.
Now, Theoden's the most interesting one because he kind of starts as that tyrannical shadow ruler, doesn't he? Where because Saruman's poisoned him,
Mm.
he is selfish, he just wants power, he exiles anyone who doesn't agree with him, all that kind of thing. But then you see Gandalf kind of gives him his agency back, and it's like he awakens from that dream, which is a bloody good analogy for depression, actually, and then he becomes the true heroic king he should have been. Which kind of like Boromir, unlucky that he dies pretty much straight away after it. Spoilers. But if you haven't seen Lord of the Rings by now,
Yeah, it's on you. Yeah.
you've done that yourself, Anakin.
That's on you.
Yeah. Why are you even listening?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. It's I mean it's kind of with like the poisoning by Saruman. It's kind of a tricky one because it's not his actions necessarily. Like, cause you've got what's his name? Is it Grima?
Wormtongue, yeah.
Wormtongue, yeah.
Wormtongue,
He's
but you're both right.
whispering in his ear.
Yeah, he's basically the voice
An
of
agent-
Saruman.
yeah, he's like an agent
through
of-
him.
yeah.
Like he's the one giving you
Like the
orders.
interpreter kind
Yeah.
of thing. Like,
I would argue that he's Grima's playing on something that he knows is within Theoden. So that wouldn't
Yeah,
work
100%.
on Aragorn or Gandalf. He's going to fuck off. What are you doing? You couldn't say to like an Achilles, "You're terrible. You're really bad at this, aren't you?" He'd just stab you.
that was close.
But it works for for these archetypes, and particularly how we can use them in our day-to-day lives. And that if he were aware of his proclivity towards hopelessness and depression and kind of imposter syndrome and self-loathing,
Well, they give him the chance to say no.
yeah, he could counteract that. Because it's something you said the other day, Matt. I forgot if it was on mic or not. It's about knowing the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So he didn't know the game he was playing.
Mm.
He didn't know that this was even possible for someone to get into him. Like, he's a very like sensory. I'm a bloke's king. This is what really happens. He didn't know there was a kind of Theoden horse master. That there was a
shadow.
kind of like a game of 4D chess being played in a realm that he couldn't see. But if he knew that was a thing, he could counteract that.
Well, so I'm jumping onto the magician one, I think, because this is something I've been thinking a lot about recently with regards to governance and experts or gurus or mages. So, like in the Theoden example, you have the magician, the expert, the wise person, the skillful person, like directly taking control over the sovereign, over the levers of power of the kingdom, right? And the opposite of that is you have with Gandalf, right? And also with like Merlin in the kind of King Arthur story, where the wise expert is a voice of advice and guidance, right? Because Gandalf could rule, right? If like he could take the ring, or even without the ring, he could take Gondor if he wanted to, right? He could do what Saruman did to Théoden in Gondor, and he could rule. He has the power and the capacity to subtly and manipulatively seize control.
Yeah.
But chooses not to.
Well, until the opportune moment. That's a great thing about the Gandalf character, that he's not scared to use that power, because the second, when the barbarians are at the gates and he's like, right, Denethor's fucked it off, I'm in charge now.
Right,
He's not doing that for a power.
The exact.
He's doing it
right.
so, right, everyone's going to die if I don't do something here. And that's how you should do it.
Yeah.
Okay,
like a divine intervention, like the last ditch.
Exactly.
Deus
The
Ex
last ditch
Machina kind of thing.
effort.
Okay, so but what about now? Obviously, in the story of the Lord of the Rings, it's like that's quite apparently the right moment to do that, right?
Yeah,
Like, there's
it's
big
not sudden,
boulders.
is it?
He give him every chance before that,
Right,
effectively,
right,
right? Other people as well, but yeah, he allowed things to play out as far as they could go until he had to be the one to step in.
And the naughty thing he does is kindle hope in people. What a dick!
So, but what about in terms of going back to the Théoden Saruman example, where maybe not, like the claim of so Gandalf gets it right in that precise moment when it's now appropriate for him to step in and take control, because everything's going to shit, it's on fire, there's an army outside, and this guy's just crying.
Yeah.
This isn't very good.
He's falling apart.
He's telling everyone to abandon their
Yeah.
stations,
Fuck
like
it off.
flee
for your lives.
and it's like, and you're done. That's it. We're done. But it's like, the kind of magician expert character, and I am thinking in terms of like our own society. Like we've just been through the whole COVID thing, or there's a lot of sort of complex climate conversations where we're all being encouraged to follow the experts. Right? There are people who, the sages, the magicians, the people who have studied and thought really hard about
the
things.
big they.
Exactly. And and what do you have to say to these complex issues that you've never given any consideration to? So you should shut up and do as you're told by the people who have given the consideration. From the position of the person who is that expert or magician or sage, mage person, because they believe, like COVID, climate, right? These are all like we're urgent. This is like a crisis. This is the moment.
This is happening now.
This is happening now, and this is like equivalent to the moment where Gandalf takes control of Gondor. They're like, well, everything's fucked. Everything's on fire.
We're going to say we have to do this now.
Right, we have to do this now.
We need an adult to come.
We're gonna diminish your civil liberties because we're the experts. We've thought about it really hard. And not to jump on my soapbox, but that hasn't gone very well over the last couple of years. There's been a lot of them, like climate models, COVID models, are just wrong, or they're just not as good as like they were like, oh, these are the best models, or we thought about it really hard. We've done the science thing, and it's like, well, yes, but you've also, the things you've advocated that people should do following that has caused significant trouble. So the point I'm driving at here is because in Lord of the Rings, that moment's very clear, but in real life, it's murky.
Well, not so much in Gandalf is obviously like a semi-divine figure, like it's obviously going to be him.
Right.
But who do we follow? And with these cock-ups and negative ramifications that have come, is it malice? Is it panic? Is it incompetence? Like, we have no idea.
Or a sincere belief that this is the right moment to step in and take control. But it may, but unlike in the Lord of the Rings example, where it's very obviously the right moment, it's in real life, it's murky and messy, and you've got people telling you that there's a crisis, there's an emergency, and panic, give us the power so I can solve the problem for you. And everyone's like, okay.
Follow the rules.
Right, follow the rules. And then that turns out to have been a pretty bad idea. And then, I guess what I'm driving at is like, well, how do we, because on its face, they're the same moment. But in substance, they're different. Right, because one of them's the right moment, one of them wasn't necessarily. Or it was a little bit, but not as much as they said it was. So how do you distinguish like the surface appearance of crisis, because like you said, is it manipulative? Because you could use crisis and emergency because people are more inclined for radical solutions and change when there's a when it's a crisis, when it's like
dilemma, like is it left or right? You know, which decision is it?
You have to make a decision now, otherwise everyone's going to die.
Yeah.
Oh my god! Oh my god! Oh my god!
And everyone needs to come on board.
Whereas if had the voice instead of being, all right, yes, this is a problem, climate, COVID, whatever, but let's take a couple of breaths, let's sit down, let's get some different perspectives in the room, and let's hash it out, which didn't happen, by the way, then that's a different conversation. But then you don't have the capture of power or the consolidation of power, taking of additional powers on the part of the government and diminishing the civil liberties of citizens, all based off of the same, it's a crisis, it's a crisis, it's a crisis.
It all depends if, when you take that power or that's thrust upon you, what do you do once the time is ended? So, that's pretty, that's an old Roman thing. This is why I keep using that analogy of the barbarians are at the gates. They basically go, oh, okay, don't worry about the normal rules for now. Martial law is in effect. It's shit or bust. Get the one geezer in who really knows what he's doing. Mm-hmm. But it was obviously in their constitution that once that crisis is over,
he's out.
You give it up. Yeah. But it's very difficult to do that, And I think a big problem with our modern world today, if compare it to the Lord of the Rings situation or the Rome situation, is their problems were much more obvious and tangible. It's like, there's a fucking load of orcs there.
Outside now.
And also, it's not ambiguous how to solve that. Everyone, shoot the orcs.
Yeah.
Don't if he tries to kill you, kill him first. Yeah. That's obvious. Yeah. But when you're talking about these massive things that are
complex issues,
kind of murky and complex, and have
social,
so many
cultural,
unforeseen
especially
ramifications
over many years as well, not just like like you say, they're outside now.
Over a couple of weeks. It's like the orcs are on their way.
Yeah.
We've got a few hours.
Done in a day.
Yeah.
They actually
Gandalf's gone off on his horse to be back in 3 days.
Yeah. And he fucking hell showed us the meaning of haste, though, didn't he? Have you heard of the program The Good Place?
Yes.
Have you seen it?
I've seen bits of it.
Okay. So basically, it's a bit spoilery, but it's not. I don't think it's that big of a program that people can mind. It had a really interesting idea about that in terms of, obviously, it's all about the afterlife. And they work out at some point that basically no one's gotten into the heaven for over 500 years. Nobody. And they're like, what the fuck? Why is that? Even like, so they do, it's kind of like on a ranking system. Like, you do this much good, and you don't counterbalance it with that much evil, or vice versa.
Yeah,
you're in.
Yeah.
But they worked out no one,
so
even like the nicest, most saintly person, they can get in it. And they realised that because the rules were written for that, in ancient times of stuff was simple. So now people are getting like
the rules,
getting hell points essentially for this guy bought some flowers and gave it to his grandma. But in the rules, it's like, well, someone was exploited in picking those flowers and they were brought on a lorry, so that's climate change and carbon footprint and all that. So I think something I've thought of a lot is our civilization now so complicated as to be impossible to govern effectively?
That's a good question.
Like too much of a spider web to basically control.
It's everything's a butterfly effect, but also in like really short term as well. Because a great example in this country, look at like now caveat, I'm not an economist, but like a Liz Truss. I don't think she went in there going,
I'm gonna
fuck everything up.
Obviously
I think
not.
she's like, I've got an idea, it's a bit different, something needs happening. It
was just too many moves in one go.
Yeah.
Basically, like if you picture like a chessboard, she's basically moved 10 pieces, and then the other, that. I don't know where I was going.
Trying to do too much.
Yeah.
She's changed it to fuck this. We're playing Monopoly now, and everyone's like, no, we really are playing chess.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying. Yeah. But that goes down to my point about how stuff is murky and difficult, and I don't think someone of unparalleled genius could work out what the hell is going to be the fallout from anything anyone does these days, unless obviously you're keeping stuff small enough in your own life.
The problem that we have as well is that we're in a situation where we're in a society where you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. At any point, when a decision needs to be made, there's so many people that obviously will disagree.
And if you go down the middle, they'll all hate you.
Yeah. So. Yeah.
So pretty much, the magicians are fucked these days.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's just difficult to get past the surface appearance, because they both appear as the same, right? The negative and the positive, they both appear as this is an emergency. We have to take action. Because that was kind of like what Grima one time was saying to the people who were questioning the king, he was like, this is a terrible time. The king's under so much stress and pressure. This is not the time for your
warmongering.
your warmongering.
Malcontent.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Thank you. And so it's this whole and we had that exact that sentiment during COVID. It's like, this is an emergency. This isn't the time for your healthy skepticism, right? This isn't the time for you to think carefully and slowly through things. Right? This is a crisis and a panic. We have to act now. So it's difficult to because they both appear the same. Because Gandalf, although he would, I guess the difference is Gandalf didn't articulate that. It was just at the precise moment when it was actually appropriate to step in, he steps in, rather than making a big fucking song and dance about it beforehand, going, oh, everything's a fucking crisis. He tries to talk to the king, tries to talk him down, tries to speak reason to him,
Yeah.
and then at the very moment where it's like, okay, you're now hopeless,
Yeah.
we step in.
Yeah.
Rather than putting on a big show about it.
And he did the honourable Roman stately thing, which was the second the crisis was over, went straight back to his cabbage patch. He didn't try and keep the power. He didn't go, right, I'm ruling Gondor now.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And I think actually we can see this work in a much more tangible, real world way, in terms of that kind of positive and shadow archetype. Versions of these archetypes. If you look at the difference between the ending of the First and Second World War, so at the First World War ends, what happens? Punitive action, punish the Germans.
Yeah.
Rag them into the ground. You
Yeah.
will have no economy. We hate you. You're
Yeah.
baddies. You're fucked.
Yeah. Find
What do
them
they do? Rise again. So that after the Second World War is won, which is, obviously a much more devastating war, is much more murky as well. By the way, in terms of the morality, and there's much more complex ideologies woven in there. You could see people were well within their rights, not thinking logically, but been through it. You go, fucking Germans again? No, really? And they've been doing the Holocaust? Oh, bloody hell. It's even worse. But what the High Command decided to was not punish them, because basically they suffered enough, and it wasn't really most of their fault. Let's be honest. So what they did, as you say, they helped them out, they rebuilt it, they denazified it, and made it into a booming economy so that it was not a money pool and a money pit and a pit for revolution to spring up. It was a functioning part of the global economy.
Yeah.
I forgot where I was going with the start of that.
Right.
It's alright. It's interesting.
But it made sense to me. Oh yes, the positive and shadow elements of that. So I guess to circle back to the essay question, if you like, is how do we use these things as individuals in our own lives? How do we take the warnings? How do we take inspiration? How do we be balanced and measured and judicious about these things? Because not everyone. Not even talking about the unrealisticness of being a Gandalf. Most of your people who are geniuses and well worthy of the title of the magician archetype are never going to be in government circles.
Yeah.
So it's kind of irrelevant to our lives to be that. So how can a everyday sage or genius person use that in context for the good?
So I have an answer for that one. So there's a kind of schism within academia, where the sages live, where the magician, the expert class live. There are those who see their job as engaging an inquiry in a various different series of domains to try and gain understanding, a pursuit of truth, and then to present that, to the general public, to the political class, or to the activists, who then present it to the political class, who then get to make up their own, the leaders of. We get to make up our own mind, because hopefully there's some kind of filtering system where the information of academia gets down to the general public, through the news or through the popularization, people like Neil deGrasse Tyson or Bill Nye or Brian Cox or whatever.
Even concepts that screenwriters have been to university understand and put in films. Yeah.
Write it into the popular culture. And they present it to the general public, and then the general public and the political class then gets to make a decision as to whether or not they act on the basis of the information.
Yeah, did they side with Iron Man or with Cap?
The other side are those who are inclined to fuse political activism with research, and so they see activism as an essential part of their inquiry. So rather than pursuing truth, they're pursuing change, right? So they're looking for information and or knowledge that provides them with a justification so they bypass the general public essentially and just go straight to the political class.
So they're kind of cooking the books a bit on it.
A little bit, yeah, actually a lot. And so the answer to the broader question of how do you navigate the shadow and the positive realms of these archetypes, it's probably just to recognize that you are capable of both of them.
Yeah.
In any of these, whether it's the hero, the lover, the magician, fool, or whatever it is, it's like you are. I'll bring Alexander Solzhenitsyn up again, and the Gulag Archipelago, he says the line of good and evil cuts through the heart of every man. There are no good and bad people, right? Every single person is just as capable of the highest feats of decency and the worst things that human beings are capable of, right? We're all capable of those things. And we make a mistake when we think of ourselves as, I'm just the positive version of whatever it is I am, and you're the person who I'm disagreeing with, you're the negative version.
Everyone thinks they wouldn't have been a Nazi.
Yeah, exactly. You probably would have
You fucking would have been. Yeah.
Yeah, probably would have been. Or you would have just kept your mouth shut if you wouldn't have. So I think it's which takes us back to Aragorn, right? The reason why he was able to navigate that path almost perfectly was because of he was aware of it. He was aware of the fact that within him was the capacity.
Where that led.
Yeah, within him was the capacity to destroy a kingdom. Just to fucking decimate and fail miserably, and he was terrified of it.
Rule badly.
Yeah, rule badly.
Take power.
And I think his awareness of that, consciousness of the fact that he's both, right, allowed him to navigate that path. So I think that would be my answer to the essay question.
I think that's spot on. I can't argue with it. So basically, be like Aragorn and heed warnings. Even if you don't trust your own internal world.
And date a really hot elf.
Yeah, but that's a kind of underselling Arwen somewhat, really. But heed the warnings of what's around you. So if you recognise yourself in any of these archetypes that we've been through thus far, or will go through in future, well, release at a later date, but for us it'll be this afternoon. You've got to see, okay, here's someone I can relate to, and the crucial thing is if you can relate to the side of them that's a dick, then you know you're on the right path. Because if you don't think they're being a dick, then you are the dick.
Yeah.
So much dick.
Can you ever have too much dick?
I mean, probably.
That's another conversation.
Depends who you ask. The answer changes depending on who you ask.
Yeah, depends what your seating capacity is.
And I think that is a good place to draw this conversation to a close.
I think so too.
Awesome. Well, this has been the
Sons of Ares podcast.
Beautiful. And we'll see you next time. Cheers, everyone.
Ciao, Bella.
Bye.